So let's start this Zoom again here. So I think that I may have, I could have sworn that I shared this Zoom link with everyone, but it looks like that I didn't. So what I'm going to do is record this and then send it out to everyone. And so let's begin this meeting here. So let's talk about from the beginning. This is the top 6 ways to motivate. Let's share my screen. I need to shake off these nerves now that I realize that I might have made a mistake here. I apologize. But we are going to get this going, and I will make sure that it gets out to everyone. So let's start from the beginning. So this is the top 6 ways a nonprofit can cultivate donors. A little bit about me. I studied political science and public administration, and I obtained a nonprofit management certification from Harvard Business School. And for the last 25 years, I worked in the nonprofit industry in direct services, operations, and executive leadership. And in 2018, I retired as the CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs in Edinburgh, Rio Grande Valley. So what I do is I do workshops, board retreats, webinars, coaching, and consulting. And who will benefit from this masterclass? A nonprofit professional new to fundraising who needs donors, but they don't know where to start, or a nonprofit professional who has a business from some time and feel like they've hit a fundraising wall, or a nonprofit professional or board member who wants to take fundraising to the next level. And the objectives of this training is to identify and discuss how nonprofit boards add value to the fundraising process, to begin the steps of cultivation process for your organization, and to launch an online course that I've created called 6 Weeks to Sustainable, sustain your nonprofit even if you're brand new, burnt out, or scared to ask for money. So you're going to get some good information here. I just completed a 3-day Fund Your Nonprofit Challenge, and this is the framework that we went over. And this is a big picture look at the framework. We talked about stage 1, identifying donors. Stage 2, qualifying them. What that means is you identify these people. Now, do they have the ability or the capability and the ability to give, and do they want to give to your organization? And then we talked about the cultivation, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, which leads to solicitation. And then the solicitation leads to the process. When the process is really just waiting to see if the donor is a yes or no in that gift process. And then we talk about stewardship. And stewardship is really recognizing and saying thank you. And then you repeat those steps. So to begin the process, this is what we did on the challenge. And I think that it is a good for me to go over this again so that you can see how we started out and where you need to start from and go into cultivation. So to begin the process of identifying your donors, really you call a meeting of your staff or your board of directors to conduct a mapping exercise called the sphere of influence. Now the sphere of influence is you in the center, whoever that you is, whether it is actually you or your board member or whatever. You can do this exercise with them. And then you have them list out, the spokes come out, and you have them talk about associates they work with, business owners they know, professionals you know, and they list the names of the people there. Now, some people like to be a little bit more specific with that, and so you can do the list generator, and this is the list generator here. It actually says, name 2 people you know from a civic group, name 2 people you know from your church congregation, name 2 people you know from public safety, and so it gives you a little bit more specifics as far as that information. So this is where you start with, and if you want to do the 3-day challenge so that you can have access to these documents, all you have to do is join my group, Nonprofit Professionals Exchange, and you will see these documents there under FYN Daily Trainings, and you can walk through this 3 days with me and have access to these documents and be able to go through that challenge. So what we're here today to talk about, though, is cultivation. And cultivation is everything that happens between the time you identify a person as a donor for your organization and your first ask. So that is cultivation. So once you do the identification exercise, your next thing you're going to do is the qualifying, and that's when you talk about, of course, informally, do these people want to give and have the ability to give, and then you go into cultivation. So for the cultivation, especially when you're working with your board and your staff, is you're going to have them identify 5 people from that sphere of influence and from that list generator who they will cultivate for your organization during the year. And it's using a 5x5 cultivation plan. And what does that mean? That means that you're going to identify 5 people that you're going to touch at least 5 times throughout the year for your organization. The 5 should be people that they believe will be interested in the organization's mission and have the capacity to donate. So that means you're going to identify 5 people who you're going to touch at least 5 times within a year on behalf of your organization. And here is the 5x5 cultivation plan. Again, you can find this on Nonprofit Professionals Exchange. I have a list of documents there, and this is one of the documents there. And we're going to talk about this cultivation plan, but basically you're going to customize a plan for 5 people that you're going to cultivate throughout the year for your organization. Once you've thought about the 5x5 plan, you're going to work that plan. You're going to determine how your 5 people will be touched at least 5 times by your organization in that year. And you don't jump straight to the ask. So I say, please don't jump straight to the ask. This is not a step that can be skipped. It lays the foundation for the ask. Cultivation lays the foundation for the ask. It is the gateway for building relationships, and building relationships is the key to fundraising success. It's the gateway for building relationships with your donors, communicating with them, and ultimately moving them towards the ask. So you cannot skip the cultivation step. It is just like dating. You do not go on the first date and ask the person to marry you on the first date. You have to go through the courtship process, and cultivation is the courtship process of these donors. So there are the top 6 ways to cultivate donors. So let's talk about the top 6 ways to cultivate donors. So face-to-face meetings still reign king, okay? If you can get a face-to-face, whether you're taking them to lunch, having coffee, visiting with them in their office, whatever it is, face-to-face remains king. Whatever works for the donor is how you get face-to-face with them. Even in this time of COVID, it's still important to do face-to-face. You can set up a Zoom. Don't be like me and I guess screw up your Zoom, but that's neither here nor there. We're gonna make sure you get the video of this. So some of the discovery questions when you go on these visits, because it is your job to actually find out about the donor. Remember, this is a courtship process. You are trying to learn about them and you're trying to establish a relationship with them. And so it is very important that you have some discovery questions that you ask them during this visit. So here are some good examples of some discovery questions. You can ask them, what interests you most about our organization? Why do you give? And what do you want to achieve by giving? What inspired your first gift? What causes are you passionate about? How can you get more involved in our organization? And so when you are on these visits, it's very important that you do less talking and you do more listening, because you are trying to get to know the donor. You are trying to get to build a relationship with them. And again, face-to-face is the top way to cultivate a relationship. Even in this time of COVID, you can use Zoom. I'm working with a client now who is using Zoom to inform her donors about how they've had to pivot during this time, and inform those that are interested in how they had to pivot during this time and letting them know how operations is happening at this time and what are some of the challenges that they're facing, and how and then the donor is asking questions around that. So even in this time of COVID, face-to-face using Zoom is something that you can do. The next thing is phone calls. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone to talk to donors. Telephone conversations are a great way to check in and say hello or follow up with a thank you after an event. And phone calls build trust. I will say that during this time, I do want to say that during this time, if you have not picked up the phone to check on your donors, if you have donors, to check on them, or people that are even potential donors that may haven't given to your organization, but you know they're on your cultivation list. Now is a time to pick up the phone and check in on those donors and see how they're doing during this crisis, because that will set you apart. That will set your nonprofit apart, that you took the time during this crisis, during this quarantine, to pick up the phone, to call them, to check on them and see how they're doing. You have to remember, this is all about building relationships, and you want to have an authentic relationship with people. And if you do have an authentic relationship with people, you check in on your friends. And so check in on your donors and follow up with them to see how they're doing during this time. Again, it'll set you apart. And then the newsletter, number 3, newsletter or other communications. Make sure you include your donors or your potential donors on the email contact list. You're going to share with them your e-newsletters as well as snail mail newsletters. You have to know who your donors are. If you have an older group of donors, snail mail is the way to go. They're not necessarily interested in e-newsletters, but you do both, because you should have donors across the gamut. And so you may not have to mail your newsletter out to everyone, but you do know who prefers a hard copy newsletter, and you ensure that they get it. And usually, like I said, it's usually the older crowd that really wants a hard copy. And then your e-newsletter and your snail mail newsletter can supplement copies of your mid-year report, your annual report, and postcards that you send out. And again, these communications should not ask for money. It is all about building the relationship with the donor. You're not asking for money. You also can hold, number 4, cultivation events. You hold non-ask events for donors, such as invite them in for tours of your facility, roundtable discussions, social events at board members' homes or major donors' home, and donor cultivation events really should be fun and in a social setting for your nonprofit to get to know your donors on a personal level. I will say the roundtable discussions were something that I would like to do. Actually bring in potential donors or my donors. It would be a combination of both potential donors and donors, and we have a roundtable discussion and actually serve as an advisory, whether I'm working on a marketing plan or whether I was working on a resource development plan. We had a roundtable discussion around those topics. And the other thing that I really enjoyed was what we called house parties. And I would have donors hold a social event in their home, and we would invite potential donors, and we would keep it small and intimate, no more than 20 people. And we would sprinkle tidbits of information out about the organization, but it really was a social gathering where they got to know each other and got to know a little bit more about the organization. We had a very informal agenda, and those worked for us as far as raising potential donors. So house parties are really good at doing that. And so when you're thinking about cultivating, thinking about those types of events, because they really can engage people. And then volunteer opportunities. Volunteer opportunities. Getting a donor to volunteer at your nonprofit can help move them closer to making a financial investment. It could be something as traditional as serving food at a soup kitchen, or serving in an event or advisory committee, or even giving you advice on something they're knowledgeable about. So volunteer opportunities for me were also very key. I was in a youth serving organization, so one of my more impactful volunteer opportunities was around what we called empowering boys and empowering girls forums. So what we would do is we would bring in four women and four men, two separate forums, one for boys, one for girls. And we would have them come in and give advice to the kids based on their 12-year-old self. And so they got to come in, tell their story, interact with our clients, which was the youth, and the kids got to ask them questions. And so this really made a strong connection quite quickly, because they were in front of the client and they got to interact with the client. They got to see the mission in action. And so these volunteer opportunities, I would say, they can fast track a relationship, because basically what you're doing is getting them in front of the clients, and sometimes the clients can sell the services better than you can as the CEO or the founder or whatever role that you hold in your organization. So I would say really volunteer opportunities is something that you should consider, and it doesn't have to be complicated. Like I said, we got 4 women to come in and give advice to the girls based on their 12-year-old self. And then we have four men come in and give advice to the boys based on their 12-year-old self. And this really went over well. And then finally, surveys. Surveys are a valuable tool to learn how your donors feel. And their feedback is paramount. They allow you to ask specific questions about aspects of your nonprofit, and even better, allow the donors a space to, when you do these surveys, to answer anonymously. Ask about your community image, events, volunteering, the quality of your communication, and you can use surveys to scale issues of importance. Donors' response can indicate where you should shift your energy and where you should focus your energy. And so those really are the top 6 ways that you can cultivate your donors. They seem very, very laid out, and they are. And you don't have to do all 6 things with every donor. And that's where that cultivation plan is going to come in place. That cultivation plan is say, okay, Sabrina is the potential donor or the donor, and this is how these are my 5 touches that I'm going to have with her throughout the year. And again, you have 6 options, and you don't have to do them all with every donor. But the whole goal is to create great friendships and build relationships. And you have to remember that they don't happen overnight, and it will take some time and dedication to forge productive and sustainable friendships. And I do say building relationships and friendships, because when you think of it as a friendship, when you nurture a friendship, it pays off, because friends are loyal, and they perceive it as a mutual beneficial relationship, and one that really matters. And that's why I say you have to lead with authenticity. They'll recommend you to their friends. So when you're doing these cultivation and you start developing these relationships with these donors or potential donors, they will recommend you to their friends, and that's going to generate an amount of trust and credibility before you're even on the scene, because they are recommending you. And they can build and sustain a culture of philanthropy. And if you do the challenge, we talk about that culture of philanthropy. And what that culture of philanthropy really is stepping away from that fear of I'm begging, because you're not begging. You're offering your donors the opportunity to invest in your mission, because they want to give money. They just want to give it to what supports their values. So you are not begging, you're offering them an opportunity to invest. And so that culture of philanthropy takes away that language and that image of that tin cup, that we all have, Mr. Can you spare your change? No. For example, I value education, and I value youth services. And so I want to make an investment where those things are happening. And if an organization that has that offers me that opportunity to make that investment, then that's where I want to be. And so you're not begging, you're helping me fulfill my goal of impacting the world and impacting a mission. So if you, as you're building these relationships and you're moving along this continuum, your ask should be well into the relationship. And if it is well into the relationship, you're going to be leaving less money on the table. So I really encourage you to think about how you're going to build those relationships and how you're going to move forward with the ask. So here's my track record. I've used this process to grow my organization operating budget from $750,000 to $2.5 million in an 8-year period. And my organization was located along the Texas-Mexico border in the third poorest county in the United States, and in a town of about 80,000 people. And this is what my clients are saying. I was very fortunate to partner with the Palm Valley Animal Society with their largest special event, and they brought me on board to help coordinate. And saying I took the event to a whole new level. I will say they raised the most money that they have raised with their event, and they've been doing it for a number of years. We raised over $300 and something thousand, so very proud of that. And so that's what my clients are saying. Now, this online course that I am launching is called 6 Weeks to Sustainability. Sustain your nonprofit, even if you're brand new, burned out, or scared to ask for money. And what I do is I help nonprofits identify and figure out where their holes are in fundraising, whether it's their knowledge, their board, or the strategy or their fundraising strategy. And then I help them build a plan so they can fundraise to fulfill their mission. And I have weekly milestones. Milestone 1 is writing your case for support, because your case for support is no longer for capital campaigns. It can be for your annual fund to help you raise those unrestricted dollars. And I truly believe that a good case for support that has an emotional appeal will help you along that path of fundraising. And then milestone 2, we talk about how to tell your nonprofit story. Everybody has that nonprofit story, even if you're in an industry that you think about confidentiality and you have to protect your client's confidentiality. I say that's true, but you still have to tell your nonprofit story. And you can tell that story from a perspective of anything. It doesn't have to be from a person's perspective. It can be from, for example, I'm in youth service. It could be basically from the perspective of a basketball in the gym, so that you can get around some of those confidentiality challenges there. And then milestone 3, we talk about developing a prospect list. Milestone 4, how to connect with those prospects. And we delve more into cultivation and really how to connect with those prospects. And I even take you through how to set up a house party of hope. And then milestone 4, board engagement. You really have to infuse board engagement throughout your fundraising plan and throughout this process, because you really have to have board support and board buy-in. And we talk about that. Boards, for lack of a better, everybody's afraid of making that ask. Don't be afraid of making the ask. That's one. But on top of that, there's more ways that board members can get involved with fundraising besides making that ask. And then we talk about setting your fundraising goal. What is that goal and what does success look like? And so that's what the course will be talking about. And it will basically take you from a fundraising god to a goddess and provide step-by-step instructions so you can really increase your fundraising confidence. And we're going to talk about how to secure major gifts without having a large staff, lots of time, and much board support. How to fundraise and get major gifts even without experiencing planning and fundraising. how to raise money when the organization has no prior history of fundraising, and it's not hard to know who to ask for support, and how to develop a more systematic approach to deepening relationships with current donors, as well as cultivating prospective major donors, and how to deepen relationships with donors and secure their support, and how to get super focused and organized with a fundraising roadmap. Plus, we're going to get free bonuses valued at $3,000. So some of those bonuses is going to be a stewardship calendar, story collection form, 1 week of group fundraising coaching that's valued at $600, and become a member of my inner circle where I have live monthly fundraising and board development coaching. And that value is at $3,000. So the total value of the course is $5,140, and the cost that is going to be for today and actually up until June 2nd is $750, and we're going to have a 100% money back guarantee within 14 days. So how do you register for that course? You could go on to supportingworldhope.com/shop is how you register for that course. I'm really excited about launching that course. I wish I didn't have these technical difficulties today. As you can see, I roll with the punches, and I'm hoping that you get something out of this in the recording, and I'll be able to entertain any questions. And these are my social media handles. Now, from the challenge, I did say that one person, in conclusion for the challenge, I put the people who participated in the challenge got to earn 6 points, and their name went into a drawing. And so I had several people that was on the Wheel of Names. And if you're interested in the Wheel of Names, it's called the wheelofnames.com. And basically it's a spinning wheel, and you put people's name on it, and it's just like spin it, and it kicks out the name of the winner. And the winner for the coaching session from the challenge is Dr. Ida Garza. And so I'm very excited about that. So thank you again. I apologize for the technical difficulty. I will email this out to everybody, and I hope that this really helps you. And follow me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Supporting World Hope, and on Instagram at the _nonprofit expert. And you can also visit my website at www.supportingworldhope.com. Thank you so very much. And that is the end of the presentation. Again, I apologize for the technology difficulty. I could have sworn I emailed out the Zoom link to everyone, or that Eventbrite would have sent the Zoom link to everyone. So I'm going to stop sharing and make sure this gets